When we talk about relationships, most people instantly think of love, companionship, partnership, and the warmth of being with someone who shares your days and your nights. But what people don't often talk about is the other side of that coin, the weight that relationships put on a man. Because relationships, while they can bring joy, also come with demands, expectations, and costs that go far beyond what's visible on the surface. And when you peel back the layers, you start to see how deeply they drain a man's time, money, and energy. The moment a man realizes that his resources are not infinite is the moment his perspective shifts. Because when you're young, it feels like time will stretch on forever, money will always come back, energy will always replenish. But as the years stack, you start to see the limits. You feel the exhaustion lingering longer. You notice how quickly money leaves your hand and how slowly it comes back. You see how one wasted year sets you behind in ways you can't easily recover. And then, when you take stock of how much of that time, money, and energy went into relationships that gave more problems than peace, it sobers you. It forces you to ask why you allowed yourself to give so freely to something that drained you so deeply. And here's the trap. Relationships don't drain you all at once. They drain you little by little. They drain you in quiet ways that don't look like a threat. It's not a giant leak. It's a slow drip. 10 minutes today, another hour tomorrow. A small expense this week, another one the next. An argument that leaves you tired tonight, another one that wears you out next month. It's the accumulation that does the damage. And by the time you realize how much you've given, you're years in, invested too deeply, tied by emotions, by memories, by bonds that are hard to cut. That's what makes it so dangerous. Not the obvious cost, but the hidden one that builds quietly in the background. A man in his 20s often thinks he can handle it. He thinks the energy is endless. The money can always be earned. The time is still ahead of him. But the truth is, every moment given away is gone forever. Every dollar spent is a dollar not invested. Every ounce of energy poured into endless conflict is energy not fueling his growth. And those years, the 20s, the 30s, those are the very years where the foundation of a man's life is built. They are not years you can afford to waste. They are the years where discipline compounds, where money invested multiplies, where habits formed shape the next decades. And yet so many men let those years be consumed by the demands of relationships that pull more than they push. And it's not just about the hours lost, the money spent, the exhaustion felt. It's about the opportunity that slips away while all of this is happening. The opportunities missed because his mind was preoccupied. The risks not taken because his wallet was too thin. The dreams postponed because his energy was depleted. Every relationship that drains him is not just taking from his present, it's taking from his future. It's rewriting the story of what his life could have been. And when that realization lands, it shakes a man to his core. But here's where it gets even heavier. The expectations are rarely balanced. Society doesn't tell women that they must sacrifice time, money, and energy to prove their worth in a relationship. But men are told directly and indirectly that this is their role: provide, protect, sacrifice. Give. That's what makes you a man, they say. That's what proves your love. And so men give and give and give, rarely stopping to ask if what they're giving is being replenished, rarely daring to question if the cost is sustainable. They shoulder it silently, convinced that strength means carrying it all without complaint. But the truth is, even the strongest man has limits. And those limits show up in subtle ways. He loses his edge. He becomes less driven. He settles for less because he's too tired to fight for more. He lets opportunities pass because he doesn't have the energy to chase them. He stops investing in himself because his money is constantly going outwards. He becomes a dimmer version of himself. And the saddest part is that often he doesn't even notice the change happening. He just thinks he's getting older, or that life is just wearing him down. But in reality, it's the drain, the constant, unacknowledged drain that has been pulling pieces of him away year after year. And then there's the emotional taxation, which is harder to measure but heavier to carry. A man in a draining relationship often finds himself walking on eggshells, calculating his words, monitoring his tone, adjusting his behavior to keep the peace. That kind of constant vigilance eats away at a man's soul. It takes energy to live like that, energy that could have gone into creativity, into building, into thriving. Instead, it goes into survival. He's not living, he's managing, he's not free, he's confined by the invisible demands of the relationship. Some men try to convince themselves that this is love, that this is what commitment looks like. They say, this is normal, this is what everyone goes through. But deep down, they feel the truth. They feel the weight. They feel the drain. They see their peers who stayed single building faster, climbing higher, moving further, while they remain stuck, tired, stretched thin. And the envy that creeps in is not because they don't love, but because they see the cost of love and wonder if they can really afford it. And money, that weight never goes away. Because no matter how much a man earns, if he's in a relationship that drains, the expenses rise to meet it. Can get a raise, land a promotion, close a big deal, but the lifestyle expectations shift right alongside. More dinners out, nicer vacations, bigger gifts. The finish line keeps moving, and he keeps running, pouring his earnings into the endless cycle. And the painful part is, when it's all over, if the relationship ends, he doesn't get to keep any of it. The dinners are eaten, the gifts are gone, the vacations are memories, and the money is spent. He's left with the reality that what he could have built for himself, properties, investments, businesses, was instead scattered into fleeting moments of trying to keep up with expectations. And the exhaustion, the endless drain of energy, is the one that finally breaks men, because money can be earned again, time cannot, but energy, it's the very essence of how a man shows up in the world. When his energy is low, his vision blurs, his motivation dies, his willpower weakens. He becomes vulnerable to settling, to accepting mediocrity, to letting go of dreams that once burned in him. And once that spark is gone, it's hard to reignite. That's what makes the energy drain so devastating. It doesn't just tire him, it rewires him. It convinces him to stop reaching, to stop striving, to stop fighting for the life he once envisioned. But here's the cruel twist when a man finally sees the truth and starts to pull back, to reclaim his resources, to set boundaries, he's often met with resistance. He's told he's cold, he's selfish, he's not loving enough. He's pressured back into the cycle of giving. And unless he's strong enough to stand firm, to say no, to protect himself, he gets dragged right back into the drain. That's why awareness alone isn't enough. A man has to pair awareness with courage. Courage to walk away if necessary. Courage to demand balance. Courage to protect himself, even if it means disappointing others. And when he finally does, when he finally reclaims his time, money, and energy, the difference is undeniable. Suddenly his days feel longer, not because time has changed, but because he owns them again. His bank account starts to grow, not because he's earning more, but because less is leaking out. His energy rises, not because he's younger, but because he's no longer pouring it into an endless pit. He starts to feel alive again, clear again, powerful again. And that's when he realizes just how much he was losing. That's when he sees the drain for what it truly was. And this is the lesson many men never get taught. Relationships are not free. They are investments, and like any investment, they can either grow you or deplete you. But the difference is, with money, you can calculate risk, you can see returns, you can measure growth. With relationships, the cost is often invisible until it's already taken too much. That's why men must be vigilant. They must measure carefully, not with emotions alone, but with clear eyes. Because no matter how much love you feel, the reality of time, money, and energy does not change. They are finite. And once spent, they don't come back. And so the man who sees clearly understands that love cannot be the only factor, that companionship cannot outweigh the reality of cost, that a relationship must give as much as it takes, or else it's not sustainable. Because if it doesn't, the man is left weaker, not stronger. And no relationship that weakens you is worth holding on to, no matter how much comfort it brings in the short term. So the question becomes, how much of yourself are you willing to lose in the name of companionship? How much of your life are you willing to trade for moments that may not last? How much of your potential are you willing to sacrifice just to say you're in a relationship? These are the questions that separate the men who build empires from the men who spend their lives rebuilding from the wreckage of relationships that drained them. And the answer isn't simple. Because the heart pulls one way, the mind pulls another. But the truth is undeniable. If you don't guard your resources, if you don't set boundaries, if you don't demand balance, relationships will drain you dry. They will consume the very things you need most to build the life you want. And no matter how strong you are, no man can outrun that reality forever. When a man begins to truly understand how much is being taken from him, the way he looks at relationships changes forever. No longer sees them through the rose-colored lens of romance movies or social expectations. He sees them as systems of exchange, places where his resources are either being multiplied or diminished. And that shift in vision is not cold. It's necessary. Because when a man has been drained for too long, he learns that protecting himself is not selfish, it's survival. Think about how society has trained men from the start. From the time he's a boy, he's told that real love means sacrifice, that being a good partner means giving endlessly, that masculinity is proven by how much you can carry for someone else. And so he grows up equating his worth with how much of himself he can give away. His time, his money, his energy, he doesn't even see them as his own anymore. They become currency he spends to keep approval, to earn validation, to prove he's enough. And the more he gives, the more the world applauds him, even as he grows weaker, thinner, more hollow inside. And when he finally stops to ask what all that giving has built, what he has to show for it, the answer often stings. Because too many men wake up realizing that while they were busy proving themselves, they weren't actually building themselves. They were investing in someone else's comfort while neglecting their own foundation. They were sacrificing their future for the fleeting satisfaction of the present. And when the relationship collapses, as many do, they're left with little more than memories and regret. But regret is a powerful teacher. It makes a man look at himself differently. It forces him to see that his time is not free, his money is not endless, his energy is not infinite. And the next time he considers giving those things, he does so with sharper eyes, with harder questions, with boundaries he didn't have before. That's growth, and it's painful, but it's necessary. Time, for example, is the resource men overlook the most. They think they'll always have more of it. But every hour spent in a draining relationship is an hour stolen from his purpose. Think about it, how many men have sat in cars outside of stores, waiting for their partner to finish shopping, scrolling their phones, losing hours they'll never get back. How many have sat through arguments that went in circles, burning entire evenings that could have been spent learning, creating, building? How many have given up weekends, the very prime hours of rest and focus, to obligations they didn't want to attend but felt pressured to? Those are hours they will never reclaim. And years later, they wonder why they're not where they thought they'd be, why their goals haven't materialized. The truth is, they traded their time away piece by piece and didn't even realize the cost until the bill came due.